My name's Jaryd Runquist. I work with Uyghurs Financial. I'm an accountant by trade. I often deal with businesses, farmers, high net worth individuals, where I focus solely on life insurance planning. So that's what I live, breathe, and eat is life insurance. And Ken, maybe you can give yourself an introduction as well.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Jaryd. My name is Ken Doll, and Jaryd's in Saskatoon. I'm in Calgary. So we're a couple of prairie boys. We're going to talk a bit about farm succession planning today. I'm also a 30-year veteran of the insurance business, life insurance, and how that can play a role. Life insurance, many people think it is insurance in the strictest sense of the term. But what people don't realize is that it's also a extremely flexible estate and financial planning and tax savings tool. So that's kind of what we're gonna get into. I'm also a financial planner, so I build the actual financial plans for people, their retirement plans, their estate plans, and come up with ways to project all the numbers out for the rest of their lives, so that they can see what they have for money or what they can spend and when they can retire and things like that. But the big underlying part of doing a financial plan is the tax savings, because we're not just looking at it 1 year to the next. We're looking at it over the rest of your life. So that might be 30, 40, 50 years. So anyway, that's what I bring to table today. And this is our inaugural episode. So I'm excited. Jaryd's an awesome guy, so he's going to share his accounting expertise, but we're just going to chat a little bit about farm succession planning. I think first we'll talk just quickly about what happens if you want to keep the farm in the family. How do you roll it over? And secondly, if none of the adult children want to take over the farm, then what happens? So maybe Jaryd, just kind of start it off and kind of walk through a bit of that rollover if one of the kids wants to farm the farm.
Yeah, for sure. So I mean, this is a great topic for farmers. This is one of the most important keys of running a farm in Canada. Is the intergenerational farm rollover rules. So the farm can pass from generation to generation tax free if it meets certain criteria. So the biggest problem that often farmers face when they have multiple children within the family is that you're going to have children that ultimately may not want to farm. They don't want the lifestyle that comes with it, but they will want some of the value that comes with a farm.
Yes. They
So
want their share.
exactly. So the question is, how do you kind of divide an asset that is not easily dividable, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's really where some planning can come into place and can really, help families solve that problem. And at the end of the day, we're just looking for problems to solve, right? And there's always the solution, the first solution, I should say, and that's the doing nothing solution,
Mhm.
and
That
what that looks like for the family.
that's the most expensive one, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And then looking at the alternatives, right? So looking at other options that are available to kind of address that problem of how do you equalize the estate. And more often than not, life insurance is a solution that really shines in
Mhm.
those situations.
Yeah. And it's interesting because with the farm family, I mean, it is a business, absolutely. There's no doubt about it. And many farmers are, even farm families are incorporated. Um, but it's somewhat different from your traditional business because the family is involved, and it's everything revolves around the farm and the farm family. So you're not just transitioning a business, you are transitioning a business, but it's also you got to take all the family things into consideration. Whereas if you had an offsite manufacturing business, you may still have the same issues, but maybe not have that family tie. So we're not just transitioning the farm, we're transitioning the family to some extent. So when we do this, and I think that's what Jared is kind of alluding to, and we'll get to it, is it's not just finding the best way to transition it using insurance, savings, tax. But the other thing I wanted to mention is we want to keep the farm family together. If nothing is done, it's going to be dealt with most likely through litigation after the parents are gone, because everybody wants their piece of the farm, and that unfortunately can tear families apart. And that's the other thing we don't we want to solve we want to solve the equalization or the farm value issue, but we also want to keep the adult kids talking to each other, and that's usually a really big concern for the mother of the farm family.
No, that's a great point, Ken. It really comes down to those discussions and getting everyone to the table early.
Hmm. Yeah,
Right. This is the type of planning that you'd want to do in the boardroom or the kitchen, not, you know,
yeah.
at the funeral. As
Exactly, or the
right.
lawyer's office afterwards.
Exactly, exactly. And there can be different personalities. Again, as I was saying before, you know, each child will want the value of the farm, but they may not want the lifestyle that comes with it. So the main discussion that comes up, or the main point is what's fair is not always equal.
And what's
And
equal
and
is not always fair.
that's a very common saying in
Yeah,
the industry,
yeah, for
because,
sure.
would you rather have a $10 million farm, or would you rather have, $1 million cash, right?
Yeah, yeah.
It's not the same value, but again, to get that $10 million maybe into the farming kid's hands, they have to put in unbelievable hours of work to cultivate the value out of that farming property.
Absolutely, and, another thing, it's kind of, the progression of society and demographics and so on, but a few generations ago, the farm almost automatically went to the eldest son, and that was kinda how it went, and the other siblings, maybe got nothing or very little. But we've seen an incredible rise in farm value, 5,000, $10,000 an acre. We've all heard the expression that farmers are asset rich and cash poor, and so it's not hard for a farm family, to have $10 million worth of farmland. And 2 generations ago, there was, the numbers just weren't there. So what I'm trying to say is that the numbers now that we're talking about are significant, and those get people's attention, and that gets, obviously, the siblings want their piece of. A piece of that $10 million farm, or whatever it is valued at. And that's, the numbers themselves drive behavior. Let's put it that way. So that's something also to keep in mind. But maybe just kind of walk us through a little bit, Jared, through how we can equalize that estate, or try and equalize it much better than doing nothing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a great point, Ken. Really, when you're looking at equalizing an estate, you're looking at the value of the farmland, and the property that comes with that farmland, um, and how many children are going to be taking over the farm,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
because
Let
then you
let
have to divide it.
Yeah, let's say we got four adult children, and one of them wants to take over the farm. So, there's a few options there. One is, um, the one taking over the farm can buy out their siblings, but where's that money going to come from is another question. So, if they've got to take out a loan to buy out their siblings, farming, we know, is already a tough business, and you don't want to have, if we've got a $10 million farm, and there's three siblings that need to be bought out. One keeps the farm. The other ones all need 2.5 million of value each. And if that one farming kid needs to come up with $7.5 million to buy out his siblings, that's probably going to kill the farm. So anyway, I'll let you kind of take us into the equalization.
No, that's a great point, Ken. And really, the plan in that situation, the planning comes much before that,
Mm,
right?
absolutely, yeah,
It, it,
great
it
point.
comes it comes prior to the farm being inherited to the second generation.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And really that's where insurance can really excel is you've already the family has already had this discussion of splitting up the farm, and this is an ideal scenario, which, is far from reality for
But
most families.
but
Um,
yeah.
but what will happen is you've had this discussion at the kitchen table, in the boardroom, and the one child has expressed interest in taking over the farm, and you've set up all the documentation to have the farm roll over to them tax free,
Mhm. Mm.
and that child will now start
Mhm.
operating the farm. Now, for the other three siblings, what happens to them, right?
Exactly.
And that is the question, right? Because, like you said, farming is very asset rich, cash poor. So without destroying the farmer or crippling
Mhm.
it financially,
Crippling it, yes.
right? How do you get that cash over to the three siblings? And that is where insurance can come into play, while the first generation is still alive and in good health. What they would do is they would obtain a life insurance policy on themselves, a permanent one, so that there's a guarantee that there will be an eventual payout. There's If you do term, there could be a risk that they outlive that coverage
Yeah.
and it expires, and then the planning is just destroyed at that
Right.
point. So you'd want a permanent policy in place that would be dictated on the value of the farm at
Yep.
uh, when it would roll over. You'd have the policy to equalize for the three remaining siblings what that cash payout would be to them, and split amongst the three. So they would receive a cash payment. It would likely be to the farm. Or if they have a holdco, you'd have a holdco set up, where the policy would be owned there, just so that there isn't any, um, uh, because or getting into the minutia of tax planning for farmers, a permanent policy, if there's a significant cash value tied to it, it can throw off the thresholds for the
Mm.
tax rollover, that
Right.
happens from generation to generation. So it may make more sense to have it in the holding company. But there's other stipulations that you have to have involving CDA and control over that, so that it's guaranteed to flow to those children. Because one other difficulty is that if there isn't proper planning done regarding shareholder agreements, is that if the one child who's taking over the business has control over where that uh, pipeline goes, as a result of the proceeds coming in from the insurance
Yeah.
policy, um, they might be able to dictate that they use it for themselves, right? So
Yeah.
you have to make sure there's careful planning step by step, and that it's executed properly, so that you can ensure and plan on, and expect that the funds will flow to their desired destination, being the three other siblings. So that's how you would uh, deal with that problem of estate equalization, and making sure that it's fair but not equal per se.
Yeah. Yeah, and just to touch on the insurance aspect and how it fits in there, um, as Jared mentioned, that you would do it for what you anticipate the farm to be worth at that and when at the anticipated time. That's where a financial plan can come in to help figure that out, determine that number. But also, what you do with the insurance policy is you do what's called a joint last to die. So it puts two people on the policy, the mother and the father, and the insurance company gives you a break on the premiums because that policy covers two people. So the insurance company is normally their policy covers one person. When that person passes away, they have the payout. But with this joint last to die, by having two people on the policy, the insurance company is not on doesn't have to pay out until the second person dies. So that's a reduced risk for them, and they pass on that savings. So when we do a joint last to die on the two parents, there's usually about a 8-9 year premium discount. And but what I mean by that, if you're 60, both 65, just to keep the numbers simple, you might get that policy at the rate for somebody who's a 56 or 57-year old. So that makes it more attractive that way. The other thing too is with life insurance, we know that you need to be relatively healthy. But with a joint last to die, because the life insurance company is not paying out till the second death, only one person needs to be healthy for them to go ahead with the policy, because they don't have to pay again till the second one goes. So if one person is not insurable or has had some health issues or has had a heart attack or whatever, and they could not get the insurance, but they can partner with their spouse on the joint last to die, provided the spouse is relatively healthy, and and away you go that way. So you can kind of get around even some of the health issues that people sometimes think, oh well, I've had a heart attack, I'll never get life insurance. Well, don't think that way. There's as Jared said earlier, we're here to solve problems, and that's one way to solve them. But really, the benefit is, and I'll pass it back to Jared, is the equalization of the estate for the other siblings with the insurance policy.
Well, Ken, I think that's a great point that you elaborated on, just regarding the joint lasted eye policy. Again, when we're looking at solving problems, like you said, you want to make sure that it lines up properly with the timeline of
Yeah,
the inheritance, right?
yeah.
And with the farming property, that property would be inherited on the last to pass or the last to
Mhm.
die of the first generation.
Yep.
And we wanna make sure that the policy also follows that same payout time. So,
Mhm.
having a joint last to die policy not only helps you get the discount like you said, because you're insuring the later of 2 lives, but it also has a good maturity match, if you wanna call it that,
Yep.
a maturity match with the inheritance on the farming property as well. So when that one child who's inheriting the farm gets the property, at that same time, in theory, the other 3 siblings in our example would also receive the cash from the insurance policy.
Yeah. So just to kind of put a finer point on it, we're using an example that the farm is worth $10 million, just to kind of keep the numbers pretty straightforward. And four kids and one adult child wants to take over the farm, which is great. So they're receiving a $10 million farm. But what we would do is we would do a joint last to die life insurance for 7.5 million dollars. And then when the second parent passes away, there's a cash influx of $7.5 million, and the other three siblings would each get $2.5 million cash, which by the way, I want to mention is tax free. Life insurance pays out tax free, so the other three siblings end up with $2.5 million tax free, and that makes them pretty darn happy. And the one sibling who's remaining on the farm and continuing with the farm knows that he's actually bought out his siblings. They're no longer, meddling in the farm, so to speak, or they're not involved in it. He can do what he wants with the farm, and he owns the whole thing free and clear. And he's not saddled with that $7.5 million debt to buy out his siblings. The life insurance took care of that debt. So that's just and another thing about life insurance. I know there's premiums, there's a cost. There's no question about that, but it's it's usually the cheapest solution. It actually is the cheapest solution. So that you're buying a policy for 7.5 million, it's not going to cost you $7.5 million. Ballpark half of that, maybe depends on your age going in, but it's the cheapest way to equalize that estate. It also As I mentioned, it's tax-free to the siblings for their portion, and, it pays out right away, so they get their money as soon as, a few hopefully a few weeks after the second parent passes away, so it's efficient that way, and, then the farm child still remaining on the farm, has the farm, and away he goes with that. And it just makes a lot of sense, and so you've done that whole thing, like, just to kind of back up a bit, but to my earlier example of the farm child having to take out a loan to buy out, his siblings, um, that loan is $7.5 million plus interest over how many years? 20, 30 years? Or maybe have to sell a quarter or a couple, something like that, so it's not an ideal solution by any means. So if that costs by the time that sibling pays that $7.5 million loan, he's probably going to be paying 10 or $11 million. Whereas the life insurance, probably half of that, or half of the 7.5 million, uh, that's way less. That's 350, 400,000 or sorry, 4 million versus 11 million. So, I mean, it's kind of a no brainer. And once people understand that, it's not complex. Sometimes farmers are reluctant to kind of open this discussion because they just think it's a bit overwhelming, and I can really appreciate that and understand that. But with somebody like Jared or myself, and Jared especially being an accountant as well, can really just kind of put that policy in place, and that's the simplest. If you don't want to go through a whole bunch of rigmarole with your estate, then just put a policy in place. And that's the biggest part. I mean, the life insurance provides the money, and the money is what's needed. Those are the two biggest elements of farm succession planning: is where's the money going to come from, and how much is the money. So that's the biggest part of the solution.
And how quickly it comes in too,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Right? That
yeah.
that's a benefit with life insurance, is that it can take as early as a week for that money to come in.
Mhm. Absolutely, and it's instant cash, it's tax-free, it bypasses the estate as well. Um, I know you're in Saskatchewan, I'm in Alberta, but if anybody's watching this and you're in BC or you're in, um Ontario, estate taxes are probate fees are quite high, and you don't want anything going into the estate that doesn't have to. Life insurance can bypass the estate, so that also becomes a great estate planning tool, and also a great tool, obviously, for passing on the value or the asset of the farm to the next generation and the siblings.
Well, exactly, exactly. You mentioned this in the earlier part of the video, but that insurance just has extreme flexibility.
Yeah.
And I think that that is maybe the most understated benefit as it
Mhm.
relates to life insurance that people often don't think about, is the flexibility that it has, and that comes with proper planning and long-term, uh, planning, as well as to what's expected or what's expected to happen with the farming property. So it really comes down to asking great questions and figuring out what the intent is of the family and getting everyone at the table. I
Yeah.
think that's, that sounds easy, but more often than not, it's very difficult to get everyone around the table, and that's probably insurance and tax planning is very technical. It's but once you get it, you understand it. It's a fairly, straightforward concept. But the most difficult part I find, and that I've seen just dealing with families one-on-one, is making sure that everyone has a voice at the table and that
Right.
everyone is on the same page.
Yeah, and often what we will do when we're dealing with a farm family is, we'll meet at the farm, family kitchen table, and we'll have hopefully everybody there. But then we'll also have a meeting with each individual person, just to find out their concerns, their issues, their wishes, individually, and then try and get everybody back together and kind of work out, or I don't know if mediate's the right word, but mediate a solution for everybody. But again, the life insurance is for everything that can be done. It's really a straightforward and again, it's the least expensive option. I mean, and earlier, excuse me, earlier Jared had mentioned that doing nothing is an option. It is an option, but then your adult child's gonna have to leverage the farm to the hilt. You're gonna end up paying more tax than's necessary. You're probably gonna split the family apart. So it's not really a solution, and it's not that hard to put something in place like a life insurance policy, and then the money is there when the parents are gone, and that's the biggest part of the splitting up the farm or the farm estate is the money. Where's the money gonna come from? It's the life insurance is just such an effective tool, and as Jaron mentioned, it's very flexible. People think of it as like car insurance, and yes, it is insurance. You buy it, somebody dies, it pays out. But what they fail to see, or what they're often not aware of, and it's not their fault, is permanent life insurance, whole life or universal life, have incredible tax advantages that CRA is left alone for the most part, and you can take advantage of those even while you're still alive. You can use the permanent life insurance policy as a place to defer to put additional funds into and defer tax. So it's a great tax savings tool, not only upon death, but also while you're alive still. So it's just a really super flexible and solution for this kind of situation.
That's a great point, Ken. The point there that I resonated with is it can, car insurance, great example. But car insurance doesn't create wealth for you, right? It's a
It's
sunk cost.
protection. It's pure
It's a
protection.
protection. And this is where life insurance can really get interesting as a planning tool, because it can be used as a wealth vehicle.
Yeah.
And this is my one gripe about the insurance as an asset class, is that it's probably the only asset class, at least that I'm aware of, that gets compared to on an after-tax basis, compared to other investments
Right.
on a pre-tax basis. If
Yes.
you're going to compare insurance to real estate or the S&P 500, you're going to say, hey, the S&P has averaged 12%. Well, that's pre-tax. That's without accounting for any tax in your company or personally, or to the estate as an example.
Yeah.
Whereas with insurance, it's often incorporating the impact of getting paid to the corporation and then extracted through the pipeline that it creates, tax-free to the estate.
Yep.
And
The
and
CD,
then it's
CDA.
calculated the rate of return to the estate there. So what would the asset on a pre-tax basis have to be in the corporation to get to the estate on a 6% after-tax rate? And
Uh,
more often than not, it can be around or as high as 10% pre-tax
yeah.
as
Yeah.
as an investment vehicle, which a lot of people are not aware of. And that's something that, I wish was more, I guess, mainstream in the industry. I know, a lot of people are aware of it, but I just wish that more people knew about it, and
Yeah.
that there was a bit more education on that front. So again, that's
Yeah.
what we're here today for, Ken, is to
Yeah.
try to help educate
Right.
on the benefits of insurance and
Uh,
maybe some of the shortfalls in understanding that people have about it. And then secondly, your other point about insurance, creating wealth during the lifetime. It's going to have that asset that's created called the cash value. And that cash value is a real asset that is held on the balance sheet.
yep.
And it's a very bank-friendly asset as well.
Yep.
So it can help your leveraging ratios. It's not like you're putting in, let's say a $100,000 premium. you're going to get an asset in return that's on the balance sheet. That $100,000 is not all gone. It's actually created a balance sheet item as an asset for as high as $85,000, depending on what your product makeup is in that first year even. So you could go to the bank and borrow against that for
Right.
acquiring an investment and deducting the
Uh-huh.
interest. It can make it very tax efficient.
Yeah, and then those are great clarifications. Thanks, Jared. And just to your to the first one of those two is a lot of people will compare the rate of return on life insurance to other investments, like you said, the S&P or whatever. But you're right. They're not comparing apples to apples. They're comparing apples to oranges, and they're not looking at the after tax of the situation, and so they say, well, yeah, I can make more in the stock market, or more investing in real estate. And well, by the time you crunch all the numbers and pay all the tax of those kinds of investments, because they're subject to fully subject to capital gains tax, whereas the insurance isn't. So you gotta, if you want to make a comparison of those two, make sure you're comparing them at the same after tax stage, so that you are comparing apples to apples. And when that comparison is done, the insurance usually comes in, in the initial years, it's a lot higher because if you've only paid a couple years of premiums, and, if somebody unfortunately passes away, the payout's there. So your return is significant if you just look at it from a financial standpoint. But even over the long haul, 6% is a pretty average, if you want to look at it from a rate of return perspective. 6% is a pretty average rate of return on permanent life insurance, and then of course there's the tax-free benefits that come along with it. So, if you want to, compare it to that, then I'm all game to draw that comparison. But let's at least take them at the same, level the playing field and take them at the same thing. I just kind of wanted to circle back and mention one other thing I should have earlier about. With the siblings, and then one adult child wants to take over the farm and needs to buy out their siblings, is if nothing is done, and we talked about the farm child leveraging and taking out a big loan to buy out their siblings. The other thing is too that more realistic than that big loan is often parts of the land have to be sold off to buy out the siblings. So they might have to sell a quarter or two quarters, and again, that's cash strapping or land strapping, if you will, the farming child. So that's not an ideal situation as well, and that creates a tax concern as well. So you gotta sell that land so they can buy out their siblings, and nobody knows when everybody's gonna die. So we don't know when that's gonna be. So maybe we got to fire sale those two quarters out just to get the cash, and so you're taking a lower value on that because you just need the money right away to buy out the siblings. And that's just, I mean, that can so easily be planned around, that it's unfortunate that that does happen. But anyway, I just wanted to throw that in to kind of round out the perspective.
No, that's a great point again, Ken. Just in regards to, selling land, like this happens often with non-farming business owners as well, right? But it's
Yeah,
not land, it might be investments or real estate that they have to
yeah,
sell.
commercial
And
buildings, whatever. Yeah,
exactly. And there's really two downsides to that, right? So the first downside is taxes, right? You're gonna have to pay taxes, capital gains inside the company, and then you're gonna have to pay taxes to extract that cash outside of the corporation. So you're exposing yourself to two levels of tax.
yeah,
So you have to make sure that the after tax amount that's coming to the individual shareholder at the end of the day is enough to buy out those shares or
right.
to cover the estate tax or whatever they need that liquidity for. And then the second problem with it is that you don't know where the market is going to be at that time,
That's another great point. Yeah.
right? You
It
you
might
you
be a
ultimately
bad time to sell that, and we see that, looking at other examples is the family cottage. People have to sell that family cottage, because there's a tax bill due on it, and that's usually a pretty significant capital gain on the cottage or vacation property, whatever you want to call it. And they got to sell that right away because nobody knows when anybody's going to die, and it's got to be fire sold. And not only you got to fire sell it at a lower price, but maybe it's a dip in the market, and it's the worst time possible to be selling a cottage. So you got a double whammy there, and with the insurance, the money is there. Then you can keep the cottage, you can sell it when the market comes back. It just gives you options. It gives you time. It gives you the availability to plan things from a tax perspective. So yeah, those are great points, Jared. Thanks.
And the other item that we haven't really talked about, Ken, today is estate taxes, and that's majority of the time it's because with these smaller farms they may not have enough wealth to create a hold co where it has
Hmm.
additional investments that
Right.
that don't meet the criteria of the intergenerational share rollover, right? So
Right.
to move those assets from generation to generation, you're going to have to pay estate tax,
Yeah. And
right?
just to clarify, in Canada, we don't really have estate taxes. The US certainly does at the federal level and at the state level in some states. But that doesn't mean we don't have a state tax or taxes on the estate. Let's put it that way. We have capital gains taxes, um, the kind of the way it works there's ways to defer your tax, RSPs, or other things that the government gives us to defer tax. But when we die, that's kind of the end of the road, from a financial perspective and CRA's perspective as well. So whether you sell whatever it is, a cottage, a farm, or whatever, when someone passes away, that's when that capital gain tax is due. It's called a deemed disposition, whether it's even sold or not. As far as CRA is concerned, is it's sold, and you've got to pay tax on that capital gain, even if you're keeping it. So again, where's that money going to come from? Are we going to have to sell the asset, fire sale, bad market, etc., or are we going to have some life insurance so that we've got the liquidity to get CRA off our back at that time, and then you can do what you want with the cottage, the farm, what the commercial business, whatever it is. And that's just straightforward insurance and really tax planning is what that comes down to.
That's a good clarification point, Ken. In Canada, we use the slang
Yeah.
of
Mhm.
estate taxes, but it's not estate taxes in the context that it is in the US. Uh, in Canada, when you pass away, it's you're essentially realizing all the taxes that you've gained throughout your life at that point. So, going back to our farming conversation, with the shares, they can skip that tax
Yeah.
disposition or that disposition of shares and avoid that tax. Granted, they meet the criteria of the intergenerational farm rollover provisions, but there's other holdcos that might be owned within the farming organization under the corporate org chart, depending on the success of that family and how much wealth has been generated over generation and generation.
Mhm.
They may have had to purify those companies and
Right.
move their passively held investments because those can throw off those intergenerational provisions
Uh,
into a holding company. And that holding company could have realized tremendous wealth over the years,
yeah.
and that's where insurance can also excel in not an estate equalization standpoint, but from an estate tax point of view. And on those holdco shares, when that first generation, the later of the two spouses, if there are spouses, passes away, the taxes will be due on those private shares of the holding company. Now, where do you get that cash from to pay the CRA? In most cases, and this is about planning ahead, is figuring out, well, what's the intent with those holding company shares, right? Are
Mhm.
those shares going to be gifted to the next generation? Because if they're gifted, you're just going to give them to the next generation. But as we were saying before, it's still a disposition for tax purposes. So you will still owe the taxes, but you've gifted the shares, so there's no liquidity in the estate anymore.
Yeah,
So where do
yeah,
you get that money from?
yeah,
And that's where insurance can really come in handy, because one thing that I think doesn't get talked enough about is that when there is estate taxes, the CRA starts their stopwatch, right?
yeah. Right.
You have to pay those estate taxes within the next year, and that can be, as early as 6 months. Um,
Mhm.
so if you have to sell real estate or, land, an investment that's in a down market, it can really be penalizing, because it could be in a fire sale. If it's a illiquid asset, you need to get it off the books quickly. Or if it's a down market, you could be leaving many dollars on the table by being forced to sell. And one of the golden rules of investing is never be a forced seller.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely, great stuff, Jared, and that's really a big point about all this, just to kind of reinforce it is, when a person passes away, whether they sell their assets or not, CRA is there with their hand out for the tax on everything that's increased in value. So that can be farmland, that can be, businesses, that can be shares, that can be vacation properties or rental properties. If you got some rental houses or something in town, same thing. So all those taxes come due when that person dies, because as far as CRA is concerned, that's their last chance. That they got to get the money then, and that's their last chance to get it, and they get it. So the question is, how are you going to fund that bill? And so that's really where the insurance comes in. A great chat today, Jared. I think maybe we should cut it off for now, but we'll pick it up again another week and just continue this. This was our first one. I think it was awesome. It's just you and I kind of having a fireside chat and talking about things, sharing our experiences and hopefully providing some education for our viewers that might help them in their situation. But thanks for your time today, Jared. And if anybody out there wants to chat further, feel free to reach out to either one of us, and we'd be happy to chat more. But anyway, thanks, Jared. Any closing comments from yourself?
You know what? I think that was a great first call. It's fun to talk about insurance, and I know if we didn't cut it off, we'd be probably talking this whole afternoon about it. But we have to get back to our day jobs here. So,
Yeah, yeah.
thanks for your time, Ken, and obviously thanks for watching. Definitely looking forward to more of these.
Yeah, me as well. So take care, Jared, and thanks to everybody for watching. And please watch for. We're gonna do this again. We got lots of things to talk about, and we'd love to share it. So, okay, take care, everybody.
Absolutely.
Bye for
Okay.
now.
Bye.